The Ghost of General Smog by Spades of Ace. It was a dark night at Sweet Apple Acres. Applebloom and her closest friends were having a slumber party at the Cutie Mark Crusaders' treehouse. Wind was already blowing fairly strong even before a storm was to hit Apple family's farmland. The smell of rain was already noticeable in the air, and any pony could hear the sound of rolling thunder approaching. For most folks in Ponyville, weather such as this could really put a damper on a day, but for a hardy few, such as the Cutie Mark Crusaders, it was a perfect night for ghost stories. Now, usually ghost stories are made up for fun and pranks on one another, while others are just for scaring other ponies with superstitious nonsense. Some stories, however, aren't mere tales at all. Buried in them are frightening truths.
And just when the last pony thought she was safe, there, standing right behind her, mere inches away, was the Headless Horse!
Sweet Belle screamed out as she turned off the lantern and draped a blanket over her head to give the appearance she was the Headless Horse. The low lighting from the moon outside barely showed enough of a headless figure in the treehouse. Applebloom and Esbin screamed in fear as they held each other close from the custom unicorn in front of them, while Scootaloo chuckled to herself about two earth ponies cowering. As Sweet Belle reignited the lantern so the whole room was brightly lit, the two earth ponies opened their eyes to see Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo giggling at them for being scared.
Hey, that's not funny.
Applebloom shouted through her fear.
Yeah, I almost wet myself.
Esbin cried, wiping his nose with his hoof.
Well, we weren't scared, were we, Sweetie Belle?
Scootaloo asked the white unicorn.
That's because y'all already heard that one.
Applebloom argued at Scootaloo.
Well, maybe I was a little spooked. I mean, it was pretty scary.
Sweetie Belle admitted after taking the blanket off from over her head.
Oh, come on, it wasn't that scary. Now, let's go see what else is in that box you found in Big Mac's room.
Scootaloo said as she pulled the cowboy box over to her to examine the contents within. Earlier today, Applebloom asked her older brother, Big Macintosh, if he had any scary books he had in his room. Big Mac brought out a box full of old ghost stories he had collected back when he was interested in those sort of things. She took the box and brought it over to the clubhouse for the slumber party that they were going to have later tonight. Scootaloo took out a pile of the books out and set them aside as she looked for another good story.
Wait, I thought it was my turn to read the next ghost story.
Esbin asked.
Since every pony else got a turn. No offense, Aspen,
Scootaloo said as she looked at the young colt.
but you kind of stink when it comes to ghost stories.
Esbin hung his head. Then Applebloom stood up and said,
Come on, Scootaloo. Give him a chance. I'm sure there's something he could read that won't scare him too much.
Esbin smiled at Applebloom for giving him some support. Scootaloo sighed.
Fine, why not?
Esbin stood up, walked over to the cardboard box, and started rummaging around to see what he could find.
Let's see. The complete collection of Edgar Allan Hoof.
Esbin recounted the list of names as he looked through several books.
Tales from the Ponyville Crypt, Untold Stories of the Evergreen Forest, Nightmare on Main Street, or maybe... Whoa, what's this?
Esbin then pulled out a fog-colored bone-like stick that had swirled from the tip to the cracked base.
What is that thing?
Sweet Belle asked, squinting her eyes at the strange object.
It looks kind of like a unicorn's horn.
Esbin said as he raised it up to compare it to Sweet Belle's horn. At the sudden realization, the four ponies immediately screamed.
Ew!
As Esbin dropped the horn to the floor.
That's disgusting, Esbin!
Sweet Belle screamed.
What is that thing even doing in Big Mac's box in the first place?
I have no idea.
Applebloom said as she backed away from the morbid horn rolling towards her. Just then, Granny Smith opened the door, which spooked the four ponies in the clubhouse.
Howdy, my little ponies.
Granny Smith greeted as she placed a covered tray of various desserts and drinks.
I was just making some snacks before it starts pouring outside. I'd hate for any of you little fillies to be wandering back to the barn in a storm like this one.
Granny Smith casually noticed the dark-colored horn on the floor and quickly leaped off the floor for a moment in shock.
Great horny hooves!
Granny Smith exclaimed.
That looked like the horn of General Smog.
General Smog?
Esbin stammered.
Who's that, Granny?
Applebloom asked after Smith calmed down.
You youngins never heard the tale of General Smog?
Granny Smith asked, raising an eyebrow.
No.
4 little ponies said it in unison.
Well, if you let me have one of your cookies, I'll tell you all the story.
Granny Smith offered.
Here you go, Granny Smith.
Esbin says he gingerly handed her one of the apple cinnamon cookies from the tray she brought in.
Much obliged, Esbin.
Granny Smith said, taking a bite out of the cookie.
So tell us, who's this General Smog guy you were talking about?
Scootaloo said after drinking a glass of milk.
What now?
Granny Smith asked.
General Smog, you mentioned when he saw his horn.
Sweetbelle said before taking a quick glance at the dark-colored horn on the floor.
Oh, yes. Gather around, kiddies.
Granny Smith said as the 4 ponies walked up to the elderly pony.
It was many years ago, long before me and my family settled down on this land and started Sweet Apple Acres, a battle between Princess Celestia's troops and a powerful unicorn by the name of General Smog had engulfed the land. General Smog was the meanest, nastiest, most vile unicorn in all of Equestria, and he had his greedy sights set on conquering Canterlot for his territory. Even his troops were terrified by their general and his mighty power to conjure storms bigger than any storm ever thought possible in Equestria. Celestia sent her best soldiers out to defeat the general, but after many of them never returned, the citizens of Canterlot believed that the general was actually going to be successful in his vile plot to conquer the city. Even Princess Celestia was feeling anxious of General Smog's power. One day, General Smog and his troops set camp on the very land which we all know as Sweet Apple Acres, while all of the Pegasus guards stayed in Canterlot to evacuate the princess and the citizens. A group of the Earth and Unicorn soldiers traveled to the battlefield to hold off the general long enough. Before the battle began, General Smog shouted,
"This will be the end of Princess Celestia's rule over Equestria. Behold, a new age for his new ruler."
The battle lasted less than an hour. All hope seemed lost as the leader of the ragtag group of soldiers was about to be executed by General Smog himself. He charged up all the energy he had in him to bring about a storm to end all storms, and directed it to strike down the young leader. The clouds were the darkest black, and thunder rolled to the sound of 1,000 earthquakes as they swirled around the 2 ponies. And just when all hope seemed lost for the young stallion, a stray storm cloud floated above General Smog. It was then that a bolt of lightning struck the general's horn. After the storm cleared, there was no trace of the general. All that was left was his horn.
Wait, so this really is his horn?
Esbin asked as he picked up the horn to re-examine it.
It sure is. Very strange that horn would turn up on a stormy night like this.
Granny Smith replied, taking another cookie and munched on it.
But what happened after that, Granny?
Applebloom asked.
Well, I'm glad y'all asked.
Granny Smith said, taking a seat on the floor.
After General Smog's death, some of the troops believed that his spirit was forever cursed to be embedded into the land. They said no plant or living thing would ever thrive here. But that was just a rumor on account of all the apple trees we have. But the strangest thing happened when Smog's troops surrendered and made their way to Canterlot. Every pony suddenly heard a dreadful moaning in the wind, as if the general was still alive and in deep pain. And I suppose that his spirit has been trying to say something to us for quite a while now.
Like what?
Applebloom asked, her mouth full of cookies.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Scootaloo asked as well.
Well, recently, we've been seeing the lights go on and off in the kitchen at night for some odd reason. I'd have gone down to check, but I've been getting pretty tired these days. And every once in a while, I hear this eerie scraping sound. And they say that General Smog always sharpened his horn to a fine point. But most importantly, that dreaded moan from long ago has returned. I still find it mighty strange that horn you found would turn up on a night like this.
Wait a minute. Are you saying this farm is haunted?
Esbin asked with trepidation in his voice, as Grandsmith took the smooth horn from his hooves.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. That would be irresponsible.
Grandsmith paused.
What I am saying is yes, it is haunted by the vengeful, unholy, crypt-tracking ghost of General Smog.
She pulled a severe horn up to her forehead to impersonate the dark, powerful unicorn that once walked the lands of Equestria. Grandsmith had handed the horn back to Esbin and said,
Here you go, Sonny. I reckon y'all be hearing from him tonight. Since you moved his horn, you might have disturbed his spirit once more.
She then exited the clubhouse, leaving 3 ponies to their thoughts.
You mean he's gonna come for us?
Esbin asked, feeling nervous as he spoke.
Just put that stupid horn back in the box and forget about it.
Scootaloo argued at the brown earth pony.
Well, maybe Esbin was meant to find his horn. You know, to give it back to General Smog so he could move on.
Sweetie Belle suggested.
Yeah, like maybe his spirit would stop haunting farm and leave my family alone.
Applebloom added in, while Sweetie Belle and Aspen nodded to her suggestion. Scootaloo merely frowned at the 3 ponies as she went back to looking around the box for any interesting books to read. The sound of rain had already started to pour outside, and thunder began to roll by.
What a joke. A unicorn more powerful than Princess Celestia.
Scootaloo pouted as she made a raspberry with her lips. Esbin stared down at the unicorn horn as she tapped it gently with his hoof. He then turned to face Scootaloo as she said,
Well, now that that's out of the way, let's get back to those ghost stories.
Esbin, Applebloom, and Sweetie Belle looked at each other with nervous expressions.
Maybe we should hit the hay instead of reading more ghost stories.
Applebloom said.
I agree.
Sweetie Belle said, trying not to sound too desperate.
Mm-hmm.
Esbin mouthed as he walked over to the sleeping bag.
Fine. Let's get some sleep, you babies.
Scootaloo groaned as she agreed to go to the bed. Esbin was getting back into his sleeping bag, but Sweetie Belle walked up to him and asked,
Esbin, if it's okay with you, can I sleep with you?
Esbin jumped on this opportunity for safety from his thoughts.
Yes! I mean, sure.
Sweetie Belle pulled her blanket and pillow over to where Esbin was sleeping. As she settled up her things, Scootaloo giggled and teased.
Don't forget to kiss each other goodnight, you two.
Sweetie Belle blushed for a second before she huffed and wiggled herself under the blanket and snuggled up next to Esbin. Scootaloo got under her blanket while Applebloom flicked the lights off and carefully made her way back up to her pillow and blanket. The clubhouse was pitch black as the sound of thunder rolled loudly outside. After a few tense moments, Esbin turned the lantern on so the room was now dimly lit.
Esbin, what are you doing?
Applebloom asked. Esbin looked over to Applebloom and said,
It's just a little dark. That's all.
Applebloom paused.
That's okay then. You can leave it on.
Applebloom smiled warmly at him.
Let's just get some sleep already.
Scootaloo said in a slightly frustrated tone. Aspen returned to the sleeping bag with Sweetie Belle, and they each said goodnight to each other. But even though there was a low-lit lantern in the middle of the room, each of them still felt slightly afraid of the ghost story Granny Smith told them. With the sound of the rain and thunder outside, it was a little difficult for the 4 ponies to get to sleep, but eventually they all drifted off into slumber. A short time later, the rain and thunder continued to pour as the 4 ponies slept, until Espen's head shot up. He thought he heard a terrifying moan.
What was that?
Espen quietly squeaked, and then looked down to Sweetie Belle, who was still asleep, and gently tapped her on the shoulder.
Sweetie Belle! Sweetie Belle, wake up!
Sweetie Belle's eyes lazily opened. She yawned and said,
What? What is it?
Esbin glanced to the side and said,
I thought I heard something. It sounded like moaning and...
You mean the ghost?
Sweetie Belle gasped in a nervous tone. Just then they heard the moaning again, which woke the rest of fillies in the room.
The ghost!
All four of the ponies screamed in unison, and they quickly jumped onto a pile, clutching to one another in fear. Applebloom, Espen, and Sweetie Belle all looked at Scootaloo, who looked back at them in surprise, and jumped away from her friends.
Scaredy cat.
Applebloom chuckled as she pointed to the orange Pegasus.
I wasn't scared.
Scootaloo snorted, after wiping off her blush of embarrassment.
You were so scared.
Sweetie Belle said as she let go of Espen.
You guys were scared too. Besides, there's no such thing as ghosts. And even if there were, that's not what they sound like.
Scootaloo argued. Espen turned the lights on, then picked up the severed horn.
What are you doing, Aspen?
Espen stopped and turned to look at his friends as he made his way to the clubhouse door.
I think it was General Smog. I'm gonna go look for him.
He stated quickly.
What?
The three
What?
fillies asked in unison.
Look, I know it's crazy, but if we give the horn back, maybe he'll stop moaning and leave the farm alone.
Espen explained. Even though he still had second thoughts about going through with this idea, he opened the door to see that it was pouring outside. Espen looked outside for a moment before he went to his saddlebags and pulled out a poncho. The girls watched as Espen tossed the horn into the saddlebag before he swung it on his back and then put it on the poncho. Applebloom and Sweetie Belle went to take out a pair of rain slickers and put them on to join Espen.
Wait, you girls are going too?
Scootaloo asked, a little hysterically.
We can't just let Espen go all by himself.
Applebloom explained.
Yeah. What if he gets lost and... Hey, what's that over there?
Sweetie Belle asked as she pointed a hoof over to her dim-lit light over the apple orchard's trees.
Well, aren't you coming as well, Scootaloo?
Espen asked before stepping towards the door.
Nope. You three can spend your time in the middle of a storm, but I'm staying right here where it's nice and dry.
Scootaloo said as she returned to a spot on the floor. As much as Espen just wanted to call Scootaloo chicken and leave it at that, came up with another idea that wasn't as mean as that. An idea that might also encourage the rest of his friends as well.
You know, if we put the spirit to rest,
Espen said, raising an eyebrow with a sly smile.
all four of us might actually get a cutie mark in ghost hunting.
Scootaloo stopped dead in her tracks, spun around to pick up a slicker of her own, and ran past Espen with a wide grin.
Ready, let's go!
She yelled as she ran.
Cutie Mark Crusaders ghost hunters! Yay!
The four ponies cheered in unison. Aspen smiled at Scootaloo's change of heart and stepped aside for the rest of his filly friends to walk out the door. He closed the door behind him and tried to catch up with the others. Four ponies could feel the strength of the winds pushing against them, and the rain splashing them like ice. But regardless of the chill winds, they bared through it as they traveled around the apple orchard trees. After a few moments, they could now see the strange light as they approached Sweet Apple Acres' house.
This way!
Espen shouted as pointed in the direction of the light, and the three fillies stayed close to Espen as they all pushed through the winds. They walked up to the back door of the house, which led into the kitchen. Espen peeped in through the screen section of the back door. It was too short to get a good look if there was any pony inside. Applebloom opened the door and all four of them jumped inside the kitchen.
Stop right there. Where you are, General Smog.
She stopped in mid-sentence to see Applejack pulling something out of the freezer. The blonde-haired earth pony banged her head on the top of the door before she looked to see the four ponies looking confused at her.
Applejack, what are you doing in here?
Applebloom asked, taking a step towards her sister.
Oh, no reason.
Applejack hesitated, trying to hide something.
What's
that
that?
behind your back?
Esbin asked, pointing behind her back.
Nothing.
Applejack said quickly, moving back a little bit. Sweetie Belle was still getting used to using magic, but she did her best to levitate whatever that was behind Applejack's back. When finally came out in the open, young ponies could see it was a quart-sized bucket of ice cream. Applebloom frowned at her older sister.
I thought there was no more ice cream left.
Applebloom pouted. Applejack chuckled nervously before she responded.
Hold on there, partner. Just why are you and your friends up to this late in the middle of the storm?
Esbin looked nervously at his friends to come up with an answer.
Well, you see, we were.
Esbin hesitated to say as Applejack looked down at him. Then Applebloom walked up to him and pulled out the horn from his saddlebags and held it up to her sister.
We were looking for the ghost of General Smog. We heard him moaning earlier when you saw the light on, so we thought that...
Sweetie Belle quietly said. Applejack's face lost all of its color.
General Smog?
Her entire body started shaking as if she was dipped in freezing water. Scootaloo muttered.
Oh, great, not another believer.
Where in Equestria did you get that?
Applejack asked in a panicky voice.
We found it in a box of Big Mac's things when we were reading some ghost stories.
Esbin explained. He still felt scared. Not as scared as Applejack was.
You should never touch that horn, Esbin. That horn's cursed, to tell you.
Applejack said in a more serious tone, taking a step closer towards Esbin.
Now hold on there, Applejack.
Applebloom said as she came between the two earth ponies.
Wasn't his fault that he stumbled across that horn. We're just trying to return it to the ghost, that's all.
Esbin and Sweetie Belle nodded as they both agreed. Scootaloo faced Hoof and said,
I keep telling you, Featherbrains, there's no such thing as ghosts.
Without warning, the lights in the kitchen started to flicker on and off before they turned off completely. They all screamed in panic for a moment as the lights started to flicker again. Only some of the lights were red and a few of them blow out with a pop.
It's just the lights. It's just the lights. It's just the lights.
Scootaloo muttered nervously to herself. Esbin suddenly noticed a strange figure under a cloak walk out the front door of the house as a bolt of lightning cracked, giving a small amount of light for him to see.
I saw it! I saw the ghost!
Esbin gasped out, pointing a hoof towards the front door. He snatched the horn with his mouth and started running towards the dark figure.
Don't go, Aspen.
Applebloom exclaimed as she dashed after the young colt.
Applebloom, get back here.
Applejack exclaimed in a nervous tone. My little sister ignored her. She stomped her hoofs on the floor and went after the two ponies.
Don't
Don't
forget
forget
about
about
us!
us!
Scootaloo said, as she and Sweetie Belle galloped after the three earth ponies that were outside the front door. Esbin stuffed the horn back into his saddlebag before he looked around the area to see where the ghost went, but it was nowhere to be found. You could barely see through the rain that was crashing down. Applejack scanned the area under the front porch roof. Esbin looked as hard as he could through the blanket of rain. Applebloom noticed that Applejack was holding on to her while she was shaking like crazy. She pushed away from her older sister with a scowl and continued looking for the ghost. Just then Esbin heard something. It sounded like a very distinctive scraping noise, like someone was filing something down.
Have you hear that?
Esbin asked, to be certain that he wasn't the only one who heard it.
Hear what?
Applejack asked shakily.
That scraping noise.
Esbin explained.
I don't hear anything.
Scootaloo stopped in mid-sentence as she suddenly heard the same scraping noise.
There it is again.
Esbin chimed.
I hear it now. What was that anyway?
Sweetie Belle exclaimed in both fear and excitement.
Didn't Granny Smith say that General Smog used to sharpen his horn to a fine point when he was still alive?
Esbin asked the three fillies. None of them said a single word as he tried to listen for the noise.
I still don't hear anything. Just rain and thunder.
Scootaloo lied. Esbin looked to see where the noise was coming from, but the darkness of the night and the loud thunderous roll made it a little difficult to pinpoint where the noise was being made. All he could see was complete darkness. The only thing outlined was the main barn right next to the house. Just then Esbin saw the light in the barn flick on, and he could see the shadow of a cloaked figure with something around the opening. He nudged Applebloom as he pointed over to the shadow in the barn. Esbin then lowered to his knees as he crept quietly over to the front side of the barn with his friends, and Applejack following behind him.
He's right inside. I'll go first.
Applebloom said to her friends. She jumped to the side and leaped in before she could say anything as she saw the figure. She screamed at the top of her lungs at the sight of the large cloaked horse. Esbin nearly jumped right out of his skin when he heard Applebloom scream. He instantly sprang into action and called out.
Hold on, Applebloom! I'll save you!
He dashed right into the barn to see that Applebloom being held up by the tail from the figure's mouth. Even though he felt terrified, Esbin glared at the mysterious figure. He let out a loud yell while he ran up to it. He started punching on one of his legs with all its might.
Let go of Applebloom!
Esbin shouted out. He shut his eyes and started punching the stallion's leg.
You big stupid ghost!
Esbin, stop.
Applejack called out to the brown colt.
Esbin, stop! That's not the ghost!
Sweetwell said after she managed to get a good look at what was going on. Esbin opened his eyes to see the stallion put it down Applebloom onto the ground. He then took off his poncho. Esbin saw that it was Big Macintosh looking down at. He then looked to the side to see a sundial sitting in just such a way over the lights gave the appearance of a sharp horn. In an instant, Esbin's bravery dissipated as he sighed. He looked into the draft horse's deep green eyes. Big Mac looked at the group and then chuckled softly at the mistake.
Sorry about that, Big Mac.
Esbin apologized nervously.
It's quite alright. But what's this about calling me a ghost?
Big Mac asked, raising an eyebrow.
Well,
Esbin muttered uncomfortably as he slightly kicked the dirt ground, trying not to make eye contact.
we were out looking for a ghost so we could get our cutie marks.
Scootaloo said in a flat tone. Big Macintosh gave it an unusual look at Scootaloo after hearing her explanation, then turned his attention toward Applejack.
AJ, have you been filling these kids' heads with crazy ghost stories?
Big Mac asked.
Hey, it ain't my fault. These little ponies were the one going out looking for the ghost of General Smog.
Applejack explained, raising her voice a little. Big Mac's eyes opened wide as he hadn't heard that name in a long time.
General Smog.
Big Mac said to himself. He paused and slowly asked.
What makes you think I'm the ghost?
Esbin looked at his friends, then back at the stallion again as he said.
Well, when we were in the kitchen, the lights started to flicker. Then when we were outside, we heard the scraping sound coming from the barn. I thought it was the sound of General Smog sharpening his horn. You know?
Big Mac merely chuckled softly as he tussled Esbin mane his hoof.
The lights in this house have been needing repairs for quite a while now. That scraping noise you heard? That was me sharpening up the field plow. Darn thing has been getting dull.
He pulled out a grindstone that he used to sharpen the edges of the plow.
But I gotta know first.
Big Macintosh asked.
What made you go looking for a ghost in the middle of the storm in the first place?
I found General Smog's horn when I was looking through your book box for a ghost story to read, and I wanted to return it to him so he'd leave the farm.
Esbin explained as he pulled out the severe horn again from his saddlebag to present it to the broad stallion. Big Mac took the horn from Esbin as he examined it before saying,
I haven't seen this thing in a long time. Well, I think it's mighty neighborly of you to go out of the way just to return it to him.
Esbin weakly smiled at the red draft horse as he placed the horn back into his saddlebag.
So, ghost isn't real?
Applejack asked.
Well, I never said that. But y'all should just go head back to bed right now.
Big Mac said, taking a step forward.
What do you mean, Big Mac?
Applebloom asked.
Well, I didn't want to say anything, especially to AJ.
Big Macintosh said as he walked to the doorway of the barn.
But for the past few nights, I've been hearing some pretty strange noises. Strange moaning noises coming from the cellar over there. Sounds like some pony broke all their legs and been dying from something nasty.
He continued.
I just assumed it was the wind or something.
See? Scootaloo, it has to be the General's ghost.
Esbin said, feeling more certain about this ghost hunt.
Oh, perfect. Now everything sounds like General Smog.
Scootaloo said out loud. Just then, every pony in the barn suddenly heard the same moaning.
That's the moaning I've been talking about.
Big Mac said, feeling a shudder down his spine.
See what I mean? That just sounds unnatural to be from a pony.
That's the same moaning we heard. Come on, let's go get that ghost.
Esbin said as he started to exit.
Yeah, let's do this.
Applebloom cheered as she chased after Esbin.
Don't forget about me.
Sweetbell said, trotting out the barn.
Hold on there, young'uns. I can't let y'all go by yourselves.
Big Macintosh said as he casually walked after the three ponies that were galloping into the rain. Applejack trotted in place without moving with a nervous expression, until finally she jumped into the air and screamed out while charging after her older brother.
Wait for me.
She exclaimed.
Great. Just great.
Scootaloo said to herself as she started to walk out.
I thought I would just sleep over, maybe talk about the Wonderbolts, and eat a few s'mores. But no, Scootaloo can't have any fun.
The crew of ponies galloped over to the back of the house to see the cellar doors were wide open. A rainwater flowed from the top of the cellar entrance. Another horrid moan shouted out from the cellar again, which left all of the ponies having second thoughts, except for Esbin, who took the first few steps down the cellar stairs.
Come on, guys, let's go.
Esbin said, after turning his head around to look at the group of ponies who were staring down at him. Big Mac put on a bold face and started to follow Esbin and get in front of him. Eventually, the rest of the ponies made their way down the stairs, and they all soon smelled a very strange scent in the air.
Ugh. Y'all smell that?
Applebloom asked, holding her nose with a hoof.
What an equestrian is that?
Aspen retched slightly after spitting on the floor to get the taste out of his mouth.
It's a basement, you guys. They always smell weird.
Scootaloo said. He could see several lanterns that hung from the ceiling around the cellar, and the hallway that led to another room on the other side. Esbin thought the smell was coming from a jar of preserves that might have gone bad on the shelves around them. There didn't seem to be any broken jars on the floor. None of them had any disgusting appearance. They then heard the moaning again at the end of the hallway, on the other side of the hallway. Most of them froze in place as they stared into the dimly lit corridor.
Y'all get behind me now.
Big Mac said as he stepped in front of Esbin.
This might get ugly.
They all walked down the hallway as quietly as they took each step closer to the wooden door at the end of the hall. Just as they were a few steps away from the door, Esbin spoke.
Wait, Big Mac. I should be the one to do this. I dragged every pony into this mess, and if something were to happen, I just want you all to know that I'm sorry. Wait a second, Espen. Maybe we shouldn't open that door.
Scootaloo suggested behind the brown colt.
Why not?
Esbin asked as he turned to face the batch of ponies that were looking at him.
That's probably a good idea.
Applejack said to Scootaloo while she was behind Big Macintosh.
Thank you, Applejack. At least some sense is in their heads.
Scootaloo thanked the earth pony beside her.
Just ignore those two. Open the door, Esbin.
Applebloom said. Aspen reached for the doorknob, but before he could even touch it, Scootaloo called out.
Wait!
Esbin, along with every pony else, groaned in frustration as he turned to face the orange Pegasus. He dropped his hoof as he let out a sigh.
What now? Look, Espen, if you open the door and we don't find out what's behind it, one of us is gonna be right.
Scootaloo said, taking a step toward Espen.
Yeah, so?
Espen asked while shrugging.
So that means one of us will be wrong. And what if it's me?
Scootaloo explained with the question. Espen merely stared flatly at her as Big Macintosh placed the hoof on the shoulder.
Just open the dang door, Aspen.
Big Mac whispered. Espen nodded lightly and reached for the doorknob to open the door in front of him.
Don't worry, Esbin. We're right behind you.
Applebloom said behind him. But before Espen could even touch the doorknob, it suddenly started to turn, and the door slowly swung open. For some reason, the lanterns that were being supported to the ceiling fell to the floor and the fireflies started flying away, leaving the group of ponies alone in the dark. Only a silhouette with a glowing pair of bright eyes that was in front of them could be seen. The figure opened its jaw to let out another horrifying moan as a group of ponies screamed at the top of their lungs. Wasn't until their eyes adjusted that they saw Granny Smith in front of them.
Nothing like a good old yodel before bed.
Granny Smith said to the scared group of ponies.
Granny Smith?
Espen said with a questionable tone.
Oh, howdy, my little ponies.
Granny Smith said with her elderly smile.
Granny, what are you doing down here? We thought you were the ghost.
Applebloom asked, walking up beside Espen.
Oh, I was just practicing for the Ponyville Yodel competition coming up this week.
Granny Smith explained.
That was yodeling?
Scootaloo whispered over to Sweetie Belle.
Must have been the wind that distorted it.
Sweetie Belle whispered back.
Consarn it, did I leave the dang doors open again? I thought I closed them up this time.
Granny Smith complained, and the sound of running water in the main cellar room.
There. Are you all satisfied? There is no ghost on this farm.
Scootaloo stated.
Scootaloo's right, Espen. There's no ghost. Now, come on, y'all. Let's go get some shut-eye.
Big Macintosh said with a yawn. Everyone agreed that it was time for bed. Espen moved to the side as he let Granny Smith walk past him. Scootaloo stayed next to Espen.
I still can't believe we were all practically spent half the night looking for something that doesn't even exist.
She whispered. Espen paused as she went up with the rest of the ponies out the cellar, and tried back inside the room that Granny Smith was in to turn off the light. Before he did, he took the broken horn one more time to look at it. Satisfied, he stuffed it back into his bag and turned off the lights. Could have sworn he heard another moan around him, but it was much lower than the previous ones he heard throughout the night. Once the lights were off, he ran to meet up with the others to see that the storm outside had stopped, and the moon was shining brightly through the night sky. After a few minutes of drying off and cleaning the mud off their hoofs, the four little ponies returned to their blankets and pillows. Espen snuggled into his sleeping bag, and the three fillies said their goodnights before drifting off to sleep. Espen, on the other hoof, took the horn out one last time and set it to the side of him. He closed his eyes like his friends and very shortly was asleep like the others. As the four ponies slept through the chilly night, the air around them felt colder than it usually would. A strange presence seemed to have made its way into the clubhouse without waking any of them up. It turned its attention to Scootaloo, who was shivering quietly. Her blanket had moved off her while she tossed and turned in her sleep. A very faint force pulled the blanket over onto her to keep her from getting cold. Scootaloo sighed with comfort as she unconsciously felt her body getting warm again. The eerie presence turned to face Esbin, who was sleeping soundly in the sleeping bag with Sweetie Belle next to him. As a weird unicorn horde caught the apparition's attention, the presence used the same faint force to levitate the broken horn over its head, and started to mend the broken horn to its forehead. When it bonded together, it made a slight crackling sound as the horn completely contacted to the presence's forehead. The horn began to fade into a translucent appearance, just like the rest of the form.
Aspen.
Scootaloo groaned as she felt a sensation of Colt's tail on her nose.
Knock it off. I'm not in the mood for prank.
Scootaloo rubbed her eyes. She could see some pony's tail was flickering at her nose. What she wasn't expecting was it wasn't Espen's tail tickling her. Her eyes went wide open and she saw the tail wasn't the brown tail of Espen. It was a cloud-like formation in shape of a tail. For all that Scootaloo could see, the pony in front of her that turned around to face her was a tall, fully grown stallion. His coat was just a jet black color with a grayish tone to it, and his eyes were red as hot coals and as he stared back at the young Pegasus. His hooves were very much like big Macintoshes, but they seemed to be more muscular. His overall appearance was translucent, and she could see Espen and Sweetie Belle sleeping soundly on the side of him. All she could do was stare into the stallion's red eyes, the familiar broken horn, which was now reattached to its owner. She knew exactly who she was looking at, the ghost of General Smog. Her mouth hung open as she tried to say something, but she couldn't find the words. After a few moments, the ghost simply said,
Boo.
General Smog faded away through the clubhouse walls. Then some night, screamed at the top of her lungs, waking the other occupants. Needless to say, the Cutie Mark Crusaders was no longer too enthusiastic about being ghost hunters after that. The end.